Welcome to the Call to Farms podcast, a place where we explore the journey of food and farming. From our farm to your table, I'm your host, Tim Ing, along with my wife, Sophie.
Hey, everyone.
And we are on a mission to inspire, educate, and connect you with stories from other local farmers and other real food enthusiasts of all kinds in pursuit of true nourishment. Today we have two very special guests and our dear friends, Mike and Lacie Dickson. Thank you so much for joining us in our home.
Oh, thank you for allowing us to be here.
Thank you so
Honored
much.
to be here, and thank you for hospitality.
Yeah, this is exciting. This is our first one in our home with guests.
There we go.
This is a real treat.
You get to see the behind the scenes and everything.
There we go.
And like with many of our guests, we'd like to kick off our Call to Farms podcast by asking you, why did you answer, or what made you answer the call to farms?
Ooh, that's a long story. Let's see here. So to start, let's give you a little bit of background. Well, I didn't have any background in farming at all. The closest ancestors that I personally had that were known for growing food was my great-great-grandfather. And then since then, we got further and further away from growing food. And I lived as a city boy in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we didn't grow anything. The closest that I had anything connection-wise to like nature and stuff like that, I had a dog. I did have a dog. So, and I had some fish as well. I had an aquarium. But other than that, I really didn't know. I knew that our food came from a farm, but I didn't know what was all involved with growing food. And I didn't know that there were farmers out there somewhere out there growing food, but I did not have that connection at all. And then I grew up on the sad American diet, eating just junk food, processed food. For breakfast, I would have Frosted Flakes, and I would add sugar onto my Frosted Flakes, and I would have Pop-Tarts and Sunny Delight, Hawaiian Punch, Kid Cuisines, all that just sad stuff that it just makes me cringe thinking about that I used to eat all that junk. Sprites, Pepsis, 7-Ups. That was just basically our diet growing up. And so her background was a little bit different. So I started with that background, and I'll get into a little bit more of where it got to the farming, but explain your background a little bit too.
So I grew up living beside my grandparents. My grandfather always had a big garden every year. So we grew up, going outside and picking cherry tomatoes and eating them, and figs and blueberries and all these things. So that was totally normal for me. And I remember, like, whenever we were dating and then when we got married, I always wanted I don't want to live in the city. I want to live somewhere where I don't have, neighbors right on you. And I want to grow my own food because that's what we always did. We canned green beans. And, as a kid, we'd have to go string a 5-gallon bucket of green beans before we could go play for the day in the summertime. So that was just how I grew up. And I really felt this need when we were looking for a house. I was like, I want to be able to grow a garden, and that was a need for me. And then I think we just really cared where our food came from.
Yeah. So let's back up a little bit, because after I had that growing up time period, I was really interested as a youth, in Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Sylvester Stallone. I was like, man, I want to look like those guys one day. So I started.
I want to hear the journey of how Mike became the big farmer.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it. I was like seeing Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I was like, man, I'd love to have a physique like his one day. So I started, I remember getting my first weight set. I was probably like 11 years old or something like that. And then I remember working out. I was doing curls and trying to do splits like Van Damme. And that was a part of just the influence that I had of wanting to get into fitness. And I was always outside playing sports, basketball and football, and I enjoyed that. And the connection with that is, I remember training for football. I was on a football team, and part of the practices and the programs was lifting weights, and I just really fell in love with it more and more of getting into the weight training side of it. It was just fun. And I remember going to school, as I was learning more and more about fitness, I also had the weight training class that you have in high school. And I remember as I'm learning, the coach for that class and we were just clashing, because as I was studying, I'm like, he's having us do stuff that that's not what the materials say we should be doing. We need to be doing more variety of things to work on. So I ended up skipping weight training class and going to Gold's Gym to work out. And I almost failed weight training class because of that. And it was just like, whoa. And finally the coach, he called my mom, was like, he should not be failing weight class. Just tell him to come to class and he'll pass. So I ended up just going to class and finishing it out. But I loved being at the gym. And then I started getting into reading about bodybuilding and studying from bodybuilders. And there was a bodybuilder at the gym. And then I just started getting more and more into that. And one of the things that comes along with bodybuilding, you can work out all day long, but if you don't have the right nutritional program, you're not going to be able to get up on stage and look good at all. You're not going to be able to be successful. It takes the right type of diet to get your body to have the physique that it needs for those muscles and those lines to show. So that was a big learning lesson for me with that. And as I started getting into bodybuilding and as I started getting to compete and I had to have that diet, I started eating cleaner foods. And I noticed a number of things with eating a cleaner diet and getting away from the processed junk. One, I noticed that your body's looking better, you're visually looking better, you're having the lines pop out and your abs pop out, the veins coming out. But I also noticed that I felt better as well. I remember growing up most of my life being able to breathe out only one nostril at a time or being just totally congested where I couldn't breathe out of either one.
Me too.
But when I started eating better, I didn't have that problem. I was like, whoa, I can breathe out of both nostrils. Mm-hmm. And then
he seriously came to me one time and he's like, wow, is it not normal to not to be able to breathe out of both nostrils? I was like, that's so weird.
Yeah.
Like, you should be able to breathe out of both nostrils at the same time.
Yeah.
That's just how much inflammation that bad diet was giving you.
It was. I still remember that. And I remember when we were in that period of just eating junk growing up, that things like fruits, things like apples, and they didn't really have flavor. But then once I basically went through a detox, cleaning out my body. After that, those things started having flavor again. And then if I was to try to eat some of the sugary foods that I used to eat, if I try to go back and eat those, it was just like, oh, that's just too much sugar. It's just too much of whatever. That the flavors, it was like my tongue and they weren't as numb and desensitized to foods because of all the junk that was in me. So that was a neat going through that as well. And for me, it just showed how important food was to our overall health and how important that was. And then we were both along the lines of just wanting to be healthier and striving to eat a better diet. We were on the same page as we were met and were dating and then eventually got married. We were both on the same page with that. We'd work out together.
We were gym rats. Really, we were at the gym a lot.
And then we just kept going deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole of health and wellness. And we went from eating natural, getting rid of the processed food, to eating natural, then realizing that natural's not really anything, then eating organic. And then it got to the point where I was like, you know what? For me to be eating the best food possible, I actually need to know the story behind the food and maybe start growing something. So we bought our first house together when we were married, and I was like, I want to have a garden. I've never grown anything, but I want to have a garden. I think that would be super cool to do that. And so around that time, I was also looking at Mother Earth news magazines for inspiration on how to grow things. And I even saw the movie Food Inc. somewhere around that time period. We saw that together.
We devoured documentaries.
Yeah.
That was like our date nights or whatever. We would watch documentaries about stuff.
Yeah, and Food Inc. was a powerful one because that really showed, it was eye-opening about our food industry, food system. And I was like, that's just sad, seeing all the different farms that were on there and the things that it was just like, that's our food system, man. If I had to be a farmer, I couldn't grow food like that. It just seems terrible. But then you see the contrast on there. You see Joel Salatin on there, and I was like, wow, he's doing it the way it's supposed to be done. I could farm like that. That's pretty cool. And that was our first introduction to Joel, and it was just amazing. So as we were growing, started to grow things in our little urban homestead plot there, I ripped out the nandinas, the holly bushes, the ornamental plants that were in the front yard. And in our front yard, we started growing tomatoes and corn and squash. And it was easy to pick out our home. If we were to tell people to come through the neighborhood, it was easy to spot our house. We were the only crazy people growing corn and tomato in their front yard.
Eggplant.
Yeah.
It was all out there right at the road because we were like right on the road.
Yeah.
So, on the
So,
corner.
That must have been a cool conversation piece for people in the community to stop by and say, "Hey, what are you doing?"
yeah.
Our neighbors were interesting, like right across the street. I remember one time I was putting up netting, like for our squash or whatever, and so I'm like crawling around in our flower beds, making these things to put the cloth over it so the bugs wouldn't get in it. And he's gonna like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm just growing stuff, trying to protect it from the bugs."
Well, security-wise, did you ever have any come up missing then?
I don't.
No, we did. I don't think we had anything other than the squirrels eating it, because there were so many squirrels in town, and they would take one bite out of the tomato and then leave it, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah. I think people, our neighbors, kind of just thought we were just odd. I wouldn't say that they were super interested in what we were doing.
Yeah.
It was more like, oh, what are they doing
And
over
it was
there?
an older neighborhood, and actually the lady across the street, she bought her house when they first developed that neighborhood in the city, and she said that's what they used to do. Mm-hmm. They had tomatoes growing up the side of their house, and so it wasn't as foreign of a concept, I think, because it was an older developed neighborhood. But as the newer people moved in, it was kind of like, those are kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, especially back in their era, they had the victory gardens.
Mm-hmm.
So it was
Exactly.
something that the government actually said, you guys need to do this. And so it's interesting to see. It's been just a few generations for us to lose a lot of the traditional ways to live.
It was.
And
Yeah.
she even told us, she's like, yeah, right down the street, they had a horse. And, to have a horse in town it's so weird to think that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did you upgrade from the city going to a yurt on 10 acres?
Great question. So as we were at our time period in our little urban homestead there, we started having children as well. And it got to the point where it was like we were both considering, is this really how we want our kids to grow up? We weren't on a main road, but we were on a road that did have traffic, and we were concerned about kids running out and getting hit by a car or whatever. We did have a fenced-in backyard, but every time we would go to the backyard, we had neighbors on both sides of the corner of the backyard where their dogs were constantly barking at us, and there was no peace there. But the straw that really broke the camel's back for us making the decision to leave living in the city there was chickens. I wanted to have chickens, and the city ordinances would not allow us to do so. And we knew with our neighbors thinking we were weird, and they were actually really the weird ones, that they probably wouldn't like us having chickens either. So it was like, we just need to get out of here. Yeah. So I'll let you explain the story on how that happened.
So we were growing all this food and doing stuff, and we were giving food away, and it was really cool. But I always had like this longing for more land and not being right next to someone. And you're looking through Mother Earth News, and you always see the ad for like the yurts, and I told him, I was like, it would be one day maybe we'll live in a yurt, and just as a joke for a long time. And I was at home, he was at work, and I think Selah was little, and I think Josiah was not very old. And I got on the computer and I was looking on Craigslist. I was like, let's just see if there's one on Craigslist. So I type in yurt, and there was one like 2 hours away for sale. And I'm like, what? So he's at work. I call him at work, and I'm like, hey, so what do you think about this? And he's like, I'm not saying no. But my dad had a property that my grandparents' old house on that was totally not livable. And he's like, ask your dad. And so I call my dad, and I think Dad was like, this is never going to happen. I'm like, never going to happen. And I was like, Dad, what if we tore down Nan and Pop's old house and we put a yurt down there? And he was like, okay. So I think that was like on a Monday, and I contacted the people. We visited that Friday because it was the day after Thanksgiving. And then we went back on that Sunday and picked it up and brought it home.
Wow. That happened really quickly.
It was really quick.
Yeah, they had it posted for, I think it was 12,000 is what they had the yurt posted for. And we offered them 8. And
Because that's all that we had left
That's
on
like-
the line of credit for our house.
that's all I can
was
do.
it.
I'll do it,
Wow.
but that's all I can do.
That was maxed out our home equity line of credit, and so we went and pulled out $8,000 and gave it to them and said,
Yeah,
"Here."
yeah. They said they said, "Well, think about it." Then they got back to us and said, "We'll take it."
Because we said cash.
Yeah, yeah.
We're like,
I was
cash,
"Well, come out."
8,000 cash. And they're
So-
like, okay.
Yeah, so that was great. We had to pick up the yurt. We had 2 trucks bringing it back home
I
in.
used I asked my dad if we could borrow one of his work trucks. And I drove the work truck and you drove our truck. And
Yeah.
we went and picked it up.
Yeah, and the next part was selling our house. We pretty much sold our house and everything, even our second car. So what we sold the house for actually paid for our farm truck as well as the yurt with the home equity line.
Paid all
So
that off with the sale
that was
of our
great.
house.
Wow.
Wonderful.
We didn't have any extra budget necessarily for funding things. The yurt was the vehicle for us to live the life that calling. We feel like it was a calling. You say call. We do feel like it was a calling to get into that lifestyle of growing our own food, living a life more connected to one another, but connected to also our food and the creation that we're made to participate in and interact in. And it could have been something else, but it was a yurt. That's been a blessing to be able to do it, because the yurt has been the vehicle that has allowed us to live this lifestyle.
Yeah.
That is really exciting. And then it sounds like you're working on plans to expand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We actually got another yurt that was just dropped in our lap situation. Kind of. This is interesting. So I found out I was pregnant with Hezekiah on a Friday, and on a Saturday, another friend of ours that has a yurt and all, she's like, "Hey, are y'all interested in another 30-foot yurt?" And I was like, "Actually, yes, we are, because we're running out of room." And what we got. So it was funny. You find out you're pregnant, and then here's another yurt. And it was actually a really great price on that one, too. It was a godsend, I do believe.
But we've lived a number of years now in the 700 square foot space that we've been in the yurt, and it's worked well. And people also wonder, what does it look like in your yurt? Well, you can go as primitive as you want in a yurt, or you can go as luxurious as you want. So I think we're probably somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah.
We actually have running water in our yurt. We have a bathroom in our yurt.
Yeah.
A shower in our yurt. We have our own, a kitchen. We have our own bedroom with walls and a door.
That's good.
And the kids have the triple bunk bed that they've been on.
Okay.
But our plans for the next yurt is for it to be just basically kitchen, dining room, entertaining area, just
And
so
a
we can
large
expand
pantry.
that, and a large pantry. And the yurt that we're in now will just be bedroom spaces. So that's the plan. So we have outgrown it.
That's great. And you said how many square feet is that second one?
It'll be 700 as well.
But
But we're going to have a loft in it, and it's going to have a little bit more to it. So
yeah. And we also plan on having like a room that connects the two, and that room is going to be about 800 square feet. That's what the plan is.
Wow.
So it will definitely change our lives.
Yes.
as we've done this, one of the things that has stood out to me is made me look back, and you see some of these older farms, and they have all these different buildings. And as we have gone through these years of living this lifestyle, I'm like, I see why they have had all these different buildings, because you have all these different needs and things that you have going on a farmstead that you need these different spaces for different things.
You can't always do it all at the same time. You have to just add on what you can, and that's another reason for them for like different things.
Yeah. What people have done these recent decades of just getting a big loan from a bank and then buying these big houses is not the norm for most of history.
Right.
So that brings me to my next question then. So now you've lived in a normal home and you've lived in a yurt. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages when you compare the two?
Wow. We've been in the yurt for 10 years now, or this June will be 10 years since we moved in. Living in the yurt, you're definitely more in tune with sounds and season changes, especially before we put the hard siding on the yurt that we're in. Because, like, you can hear everything. Like, you know when something's in your chickens or somebody's not happy outside, or, like, when it's raining. If it's raining really hard, you can't talk to anybody on the phone because it just drowns everything out. Now, I still love the rain, listening to it to go to sleep at night. That's fantastic. So that would be, like, some of the downsides
The downside, I would say, is adjusting to the smaller space.
Yeah.
Or in any smaller space, and anybody living in a tiny space would probably agree with that. We live in a society that there's a lot of material goods and exchanges of that, and you got people bringing you things, and having a small space is hard to figure out at times. You really have to be intentional about what all you have and what all you need to get rid of sometimes. So that can be a challenge. Even if it was just a couple living in the same space would still be a challenge, because in our society, people even fill up their garages and can't even park their cars in there just because we just have so much stuff.
Right.
It's just the way our society is. And yeah, that's a challenge navigating through that. But some of the blessings that stand out is the closeness that we have with each other. It's not like we all have this big house that we can all just isolate ourselves in different rooms of the house and just spread out and not interact with each other. It's like we're forced to really interact, to work through problems that are there, work through personality conflicts, and those are learning experiences, but it also helps with the overall closeness of your family. It means we're eating meals together. It means we're eating in different rooms, though we're eating together in the same room and doing a lot of the same activities together. And we know what's going on with each other's lives because it's kind of hard to get away from it.
Yeah, you can't get away from each other.
Yeah, so
So,
that's the way it used to be as well.
yes.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I mean, we've noticed that too. Coming from the Bay Area, we had a larger 6-bed, 6-bathroom home for mom and dad, for all of us together. But one of the biggest challenges, or one of the things that we saw was, when we had parties, we would invite everyone, which was great. Like, we had hosted Friendsgiving and we had 20 families with us under one roof. So it was nice. And we had, the men and the women go and the kids would have a separate space. But we never really had in-depth conversations the way that we do now, such as, we're in a small modular home here, but we would love to host parties, but we can't. We can only host families. And so that I often saw that as like a limitation. But now it's such a huge advantage because we can intimately get to know one another and our families. And it is a tight space, but we're sharing all of our meals together. We're doing our work together. And it's been really a blessing to have. Probably the biggest blessing, moving from a larger space to a smaller space. Just realizing you don't need all of the people too, all of the stuff, all of the relationships. You don't need all of that.
And coming with those bigger spaces is like, that's more of mortgages and bills that you have. That's more of time that is going to force you to spend away from your family. It's like it's just geared towards disconnecting and disintegrating the family instead of bringing it together.
And we realized when we lived in the city, like, there are rooms we didn't even go into.
Yeah.
Like, so why are we paying to heat and cool and all of this whenever, like, we're not even using those rooms?
That brings to mind, before we actually moved into the yurt, we cut off more than half of our previous house just to see what it was like living in a smaller space. And it's just like, all these, what was it, 1, 2, 3? It's like 3, 4 other rooms that we weren't even used, didn't even need to use anymore. It's like, we didn't need that.
Yeah.
I was curious, with your large family and that you homeschool, and both of you have such great personalities online on your YouTube and Instagram, how do you do it? How do you do it all? How do you have that division of labor and also, sustain your animals with your new dairy cow? How do you split up the responsibilities? How do you, get all, and that kind of leads to the previous question, of like, how do you do it in that small confined space?
That's interesting. Good question. One of the mistakes that I made early on when we started the homestead was I tried to do it all by myself, and that was to the detriment of my own health and the hindrance of everyone else. So it was a process of learning how to involve everyone, and I do encourage anybody else who has a business, a farm, homestead, whatever, to include others, because what happens when you're sick or down? Who's going to take care of everything? Things could just totally crumble and fall apart if you're not working together as a team. And working together as a team still helps to build that connectiveness to each other as a family unit. So I try to have them involved early on. Once I got through that, and it's like, hey, we need to do that. So we try to do chores and things, give them areas of responsibilities based on their age and some of their strengths as well, physical strengths as well as just their character strengths. So just so that, because there's so much going on there that it has to really, for it to really function and keep going, we need everybody to help out. It's not a one-man show. We gotta have everybody pitching in the way that they can. Whether it's starting them out at 5 years old, just helping to gather eggs. That's one of the things we did with Micah. We just had him just go out, gather the eggs for us. You can do that, and it builds his confidence up, and then you can start doing a little bit more. Okay, now that you can gather eggs, let's give them some feed and some water. Okay, then he's doing a little bit more, adding to that, building his confidence, also helping out. At first, it may not speed you up. It may not cut time to teach.
It'll definitely slow you down.
And I hear that oftentimes with parents that are like, it's just so much faster if I just do it. It's such a limited perspective when you think of it that way, because you're just looking at that small window of time that, yes, you'll get it faster. Say that your dinner, you'd get dinner done faster by not including them that one evening. But how are you hindering them from growing in the future and learning to do different things and helping them to become a fully functional adult? You're hindering them from that growth. You're also hindering your learning of being a better teacher to teach them these skills and pass them on. So it takes a change of perspective. So back to Micah, teaching them how to gather eggs and feed the chickens, then give them water. Then all of a sudden it's like, that's your area now. You oversee, you take care of those chickens, make sure that their fences are turned on, making sure they're taken care of. That's your area. And then it can grow from there in different areas. It's just gradually introducing and building on that.
That's exactly what we do in the military. You just introduce, as you're moving up the ranks, you just have a small amount of responsibility, and each time you get promoted, you're just, given more responsibility. So
there we go.
Like that.
There we go. And mistakes will happen. There's learning in that too. Yeah. There's learning that there's not, it helps them to see that there are consequences for inaction and not doing the things that you should do, that we need to take personal responsibility when we screw up.
And being able to identify things that need to be done.
Yep.
So, we can walk outside and say, okay, why are the chickens acting this way? Somebody hasn't been fed today, or something's going on.
Yep.
But trying to teach that to them so they can see that too. Because as you know, it's hard finding farm help whenever you go out of town, because people just don't have the same eyes to see things and see what's going on like you do. So even training them to be able to we're still working on that, because we're like, what's going on over here? Something needs to happen.
We're all a work in progress. So
yes.
We're also learning patience ourselves as we see their mistakes, and it's helping us to learn to develop better character overall as we're working with individuals, because we all make mistakes. We all need to learn how to deal with that. And we live in a society now where nobody wants to take responsibility for anything. They want to point the finger and blame somebody else for their own shortcomings on everything. It's never their fault. No, we're not. We want to teach something different. Yeah. If you have a mistake and it's your fault, own up to it.
Right.
You didn't feed the chickens or do this or that. Just say, I screwed up. I'm sorry. Those are things that we try to instill with all that.
It sounds so simple, but even just that lesson alone is so valuable. And last month when you guys were here, and I had the kids, we just came back to get the chores done before sundown, Josiah and Micah already knew what to do when we had to go feed the cows. And I said, oh no, Mr. Tim's not here, and usually I carry it. Can you guys grab a hay bale and toss it out for the cows? And I think I still have the image in my mind. Josiah took a whole square bale over his head and he just walked it through. No problem. And Micah opened up the gates for him. This was their first time on our farm, and they already instinctually knew what to do.
Wow.
So that's just a true testament to how you guys have trained the children. I'm sure Selah's great. I haven't seen her yet on the farm, but just to speak about how, and they're around our kids' age too, 12, right? And under. And just to have that responsibility in today's society is so critical. And I know not a lot of families or children have the opportunity to do that, but the fact that you have to raise your children that way is just a true testament to your parenting.
Thank you. One of the things that I learned early on is that, I was like, I want to be the best father that I can be. And that doesn't mean giving them everything. I think a lot of times in our society as parents, we try to outsource everything, and we try to provide them with just a lot of material goods, and we fail to provide them with teaching. That's a big part of our role as parents, is to teach them, equip them to be adults one day, shape them in that. And a big part of that is also teaching them to have a good work ethic. And that's one of the things that kind of naturally can come on a farmstead, is teaching them how to work. We live in a society now that people don't want to work. It's sad. So if we can equip our children to be good workers, that sets them up for a lot of success in the future, because you got other people that don't want to work, and then those who want to work will really stand out.
Right.
And it sets them up for greater success as adults.
Right. That's how we like to teach our kids too, and just that level of anticipation. If you can get ahead of something before someone asks you to do it, that means you're able to critically think through it, get ahead of it, and sets you apart from everyone else too.
Yeah, absolutely. Just being proactive and just being motivated to work.
Yeah,
exactly.
It reminds me of a proverb. It's like, the hand of the diligent will rule. It means like those who are diligent, who are hardworking, they'll be in good positions of leadership.
And we tell our kids, we're like, look, whenever you go and work for somebody else, you're going to see a lot of people that don't work. And one day you may not like it that we're hard on you, that we're teaching you how to work and do these things. But one day you're going to look back and you're going to say, thank you so much. Because that's what I did with my dad. He owns masonry business. I've been a laborer. I've done stuff like that. And whenever I went and worked for somebody else, I was like, thank you, Dad, so much. Because like all these other people, they can't see problems that need to be solved. They can't see these things. And like, I don't want to be like that, because it really limits you on what you can do. And like, being a hard worker and being a producer just puts you in a different level and opens up so many more doors.
And it's not about the money, and it's not about the power. That having a good work ethic is really about serving other people.
Yeah.
That you want to work hard so that way you're a blessing to your family, you're a blessing to the community and society around you. That's really should be at the heart of it. That I have a good work ethic because I want to be able to give. If I'm on a farmstead and I'm working hard and I'm producing a lot, that means I have more that I can give and share with others. That's where real fulfillment comes.
Mm-hmm. And that's your motto on your shirt: give more than you take. I love it.
I didn't even mean to tie into that.
And we're talking about hard work. What are some of the challenges you guys faced on the farm, or things you didn't plan on and kind of surprised you, and how did you overcome it?
First off, I would say over-romanticizing the lifestyle. First, you go into it and you look in the magazines, or you're watching Polyface and you see Food Inc. and you see Polyface Farms and Joel, and you just see these beautiful images, and you're just like, yes, I want that, and that's good. But then you just see that's all you have in your mind is just the good and the best, and then you start doing this, and then
things die,
animals die, crops fail, and you have problems, you have flooding. Just problems happen. You're slapped in the face with reality.
Yeah.
And that can be, that's an adjustment.
I think that kicks a lot of people out of homesteading, actually, and farming.
Yep.
Because they come in with this over-romanticized view of things. And, I mean, we've definitely had times where it's just like everything feels like it's dying.
Yep.
And, like, where do you go? What do you do? And unless you have, like, a real good community around you, you're unrelatable to people, and it feels kind of like hopeless. I think.
And it also brings challenges to, especially if you haven't spent a lot of time together as a family and as a couple. It will bring things to light that you kind of avoided. Like when you go off to work, say you started off the day, maybe you got in a conflict with your spouse, so you go to work, you don't see each other for hours. You can kind of forget about it. It kind of gets pushed to the wayside, and then you're back together for dinner, or you watch TV or whatever. But when you're living this life together, you see each other all day long, you're forced to deal with that problem one way or the other. And that's ultimately it's good. You should be able to work through those things, but it is an adjustment for people, because you have to, with that, you also have to figure out the roles. Who's going to do what and when, and iron those things out. And for some people, getting into the homesteading, that can be a challenge and can create conflict. Another thing that comes to mind is, I guess, the financial side of things. You have in your mind all these different things you want to do, and you want to do it like that. It doesn't work like that. And adjusting to not being able to have all the tractors and equipment and animals that you want to have right away, that's tough for people as well. That's a challenge to deal with. And that teaches a patient too that we just can't have everything right away. We got to build and work with what we have.
Perseverance.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because when we started, we didn't have anything. We had hand tools.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
like,
till the ground literally by hand. With a mattock.
Yeah, and then like our soil was so terrible and
Clay.
red clay that we had this big grate that
I sifted the clay.
He sifted the soil through that. I mean, by hand for all of our beds.
I'm not saying people have to do that at all.
No, but I'm just saying that's what we had when we started. That's where we started from, and like it really like you got to have some grit to get through stuff.
It did teach. It's humbling. And it does teach you grit to go through those hard things. And that's needed for this lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we saw in 2020 with a lot of the employees in the tech world anyway, when they had to move home together and quarantine together and work remote, we saw the divorce rate increase and go through the roof because, like you were saying, Mike, that a lot of couples had to now deal with the problem at hand. And sometimes that problem was their spouse, unfortunately. But, you're right in that living this lifestyle, it has brought a lot of things to light. Not just, we're talking about, us having to still make an income outside as we transition to homesteading. We haven't figured out a way, nor is it really a priority for us and our family to make our homestead our full-time income, because we want to be able to give. And specifically about, if I start weighing out my tomatoes and know how much I'm going to make per pound if I sold it, or our milk, for example, I'd rather use those as tools to barter, because then I feel that if there's a family that needs a blessing, an extra, I can give freely. And so that's just something that we're trying to figure out. Okay, well, we still have to work, but working remote, which we had done prior to 2020, so we kind of already have gone through the transition of being together in the small space all the time. But, one of the advice that you both gave us last month when you were here with us was the marriage meetings. And we've since implemented, and would love to hear more about that. And for everybody else, we hadn't done that before, nor had we heard of it. So it was just really great to hear. And I put together an Asana board, and starting to bring some of the tech back into my life.
We've gone corporate.
Corporate homesteading.
Let's just say, that's a great tagline. Tim had told me, like, maybe you need to just talk to me like a corporate employee when you bring feedback.
Well, I think it's definitely needed. Like, there needs to be a time where it's like you're talking relationally, husband and wife. And then a time when you're like, okay, this is definitely like more business side of it. And I appreciate that more. Like, I need the separation too, because I can get my feelings hurt pretty bad. So I have to go into something thinking like, okay, this is not like directed toward me as a person, but I definitely need that, because my love language is words of affirmation is one of those. So I need the talking and you're doing a great job, Lacie. And so I think the marriage meeting allows us to have that husband and wife time. And then I even told him I think we need to have another business meeting in the week too. So maybe even take the business all out of that meeting. And so we have a marriage meeting that's working on our relationship and building that, and then another one would be like, okay, this week this is what we need to do for our business, and have that separate. I feel like that's hard sometimes because we're together all the time, and you may have like a family question, but you're in business mode, And that's kind of hard to navigate. So Mike is big on write it down and bring it up at this time during like a family thing during our family time so we can address it then, and a business thing in business time. Is that how?
Yeah, yeah, because especially you need to protect the times. Like when you're having family time, that's not the time to talk about, well, you need to get back in touch with such and such from this business so we can see if we can work together, whatever. No, you want to protect that time. And just when you're at the having family meals time, sitting down, those are important too, family meals together. Making sure you're talking about things that are important to the kids, and it not be a time where you're on your phone or you're checking emails and it becomes a business. There needs to be a distinct separation at times. Sometimes that's hard. So, because we do everything together, sometimes just things do pop up, and you handle that on each basis or whatever. But so it can be a challenge.
I think it was hard for us to learn that in the beginning, especially doing YouTube. Whenever you're trying to get a video out, and I would spend at that time we had a 6-month-old when we started, and so I would stay up late at night doing video, but like that will burn you out really quick. And I think over time we figured like, okay, dinner time is pretty much cut off for editing and all, unless it's super pressing or something. So it would be unusual for me to edit past dinner time into the night now.
And we also try to work in blocks. Like they don't need to be trying to record a video or blog at the same time that you're trying to homeschool. Like focus on one thing so that can have your attention. Even if one of us is working on one thing and then the other could be doing something different with the kids or whatever, but to have that distinction is important, because if not, it just becomes chaotic mess and you're not really doing anything really well.
Yeah.
The genesis of that started with I like to listen to podcasts, kind of like yours, where I'm learning stuff. And as I'm doing farming things, I'm just listening to podcasts. And I remember I came across this one podcast, and the guest on there talked about having a marriage meeting, a weekly marriage meeting, and the benefits of that at that meeting, because a lot of times you go through life together as a family, and you're just saying things in passing to each other. Oh, this needs to be done. Then that thing gets forgotten. It's not presented at the good time or the right time. It's just whatever convenient time that it pops in that person's mind. That doesn't really work well. And when you kind of look at it in business world, where the businesses that do well, and I had the opportunity to visit Polyface Farms a number of times, and I watch how they're the most successful farm that I have been to. I've been to a number of different ones inside the U.S. and some outside, that they run in a very effective team. The individuals love, the team members enjoy being there. But one of the things that they do each morning, I'm not saying you have to do this with your family, but each morning they have a little brief meeting where they kind of let everybody up, get everybody abreast of what's going on, and then they disperse. But that is communication. It's structured communication, intentional communication. Why can that not be implied in family and settings? It should be.
Should be, yeah.
So with having the marriage meeting, we come together. You should come together prepared of what you're going to talk about. Start off with the meeting. You can open the meeting, however, we'll do a prayer, and then we'll just kind of hug on each other and show appreciation, things that
and we go back and forth and like tell like what we appreciated about each other during that week and things.
To start off on a good tone.
Yeah.
Most people want to start. It's not a bashing session.
No.
It doesn't mean you can't talk about anything negative that needs to be improved on, but you need to start off, set the tone for what's going to happen in the meeting. And then you kind of gradually get into some of the things that you need to work on. Maybe start on one problem, one area, maybe no more than two. But then after that, follow it up with something else good and positive to look forward to and work together. And try to end positive as well. So that way it's upbeat. You've communicated the things, whether it's what's for dinner for the week or the day, what's going on activity-wise, what events going on here.
What bills need to be paid, the
What bills
financial
need to be-
aspect of it too. Like this is where we're at, this is what we need to do.
Yeah.
So you're both on the same page.
Communicating if there's a child struggling in a particular area, how you plan to address that. Things like that you really just sit down and work through problems together instead of just going, this ongoing cycle of seeing problems, randomly mentioning them through the day, but never really solving them and talking about them together in a structured way. So, and also talking about fun things like setting goals of maybe you want to have a special date weekend day or whatever where you go do this, or as a family, this special event that you want to go to. I remember one time we had a goal of kids wanted to go to this Japanese restaurant for whatever reason. I was like, all right, we do this. We're all going to go to the Japanese restaurant together, and it worked out.
Yeah, we did that. The
So-
Switch too. That was another thing.
Yeah.
Like, they don't play video games a lot.
It's a privilege. It's not a daily thing. Another thing that I've noticed about the homesteading lifestyle is some people, yes, we should work hard. We should work hard, but life is balance. Have fun times. Plan for fun times. Mm-hmm. It's okay to do some fun stuff. Go ride go-karts. Go to amusement park. Things that you like to do that. Life should be enjoyable. It shouldn't be work all the time. We're not robots. Yeah, we should work hard and have a good work ethic, but we should also, what I like to say to the kids, we earn the right to play. You work hard, and then the reward is play. Play's not the right, necessarily. I got to earn it.
I love that. We try to do that balance in our family too, I think just naturally, because I'm more of the work hard, just because of my background coming from an immigrant family. That's all I knew how to do. We couldn't afford vacations. We couldn't really afford to have fun. And then I was the youngest one. There's 11-year difference between my sibling and I. And so I never got to really go to an amusement park with my parents or family. But I think Tim, being a second generation, he has more of that balance of, wanting to go to.
I had more of that privilege, but at being the eldest, I had a lot more responsibilities, and I want to just preserve the youth, I guess, like just the fun.
Yeah.
And so I may sometimes go overboard in trying to push that. So we're constantly trying to balance each other out.
Another thing I've noticed with farming is, especially some of the older farmers, their kids don't want to be involved in farming at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you look at the life that they lived, it was never fun. It was just drudgery all the time. I wouldn't want that either.
Yeah.
I want our kids to know, yes, we work hard, we have the animals and do these things. But yeah, our parents also took us to do fun stuff that can be a part of that lifestyle as well. And that hopefully if they do decide to farm, that they can look at it with a balanced perspective of instead of just 100% work all the time.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that, because when Sophie married me, she thought I was going to be outdoorsy being in the Army, but I said, no, I really don't like the outdoors, because that was my first exposure to camping and hiking in the Army, and I absolutely hate it.
Oh, man.
So when she married me, I was like, yeah, we're going to stay at a hotel, we're going to do all these things, and she's like, oh my goodness.
No. Well, when we were dating, I was like, let's go camping. And I packed the food and tent camping, and he was all down for it. He was great. And then we got married, and
That was dating, okay? That's, best foot forward. And now our compromise is the RV, because that's the best of both worlds. We can still go out, but have some luxury. We're talking about good stuff here. So what is it about homesteading that, I guess, that lights up your life? What is it about it? Because you mentioned there's a lot of downsides, of course, with chores and all that. But what is it that gets you through the day?
The enjoyment of living the life connected together outside and doing the different things together. And the enjoyment of sitting down, having a meal together where we grew the food. That's so rewarding all around. It's like everything centered really around the family. We homestead because of the family, because of our family. And to see that we can all do those things and do it in an interactive, connective way together, that's what makes it matter. That's what makes it matter. And just seeing the animals and kids connected together with it, and knowing that God created this environment for us to interact with one another and the environment together, and the life that I feel like we were designed to live, that means a lot. That means a lot. That's what kind of motivates me and brings a smile to my face, seeing that, hey, we're doing our best to provide our family with the life that we were designed to live. At least I believe that.
So, Mike, you're known as the fit farmer, and I would just love to kind of get some of the tidbits in terms of how do you stay fit on the farm?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the exercises that you do? Do you still go to the gym?
I actually quit going to the gym probably about, 6 years ago, maybe, something like that. Yeah. Just because I found that I didn't need the gym anymore. I'm not saying that's the case for everybody, but when you think about it, I like to say real work is the original workout. That gyms and all these things came about because people weren't exerting themselves anymore in the labor and things that they did on a day-to-day basis. So they had a lot of leisure time, a lot of time idle. So they needed to find a way to supplement to get the exercise that they needed. But living on a farm, if you're intentional and you're doing the physical things and machines not doing all your labor for you, there's a lot of exercise, a lot of physical activity that comes through just doing those things. Because back in the day when most of people were in agrarian lifestyle, there was no gyms around. They didn't need it. People wouldn't have gone to those places because they're lifting hay bales, they're manually plowing their gardens, they're carrying wood around, you name it, splitting wood. These are the things that people were doing, and there was no need for that. And it's kind of funny, when I was working as a personal trainer at the gym, we would be having them do the same exercises that would normally happen on a homestead. We're using a sledgehammer to hit a tire, which is very similar to splitting wood, but with actually doing it, not only getting exercise, you're actually producing something at the same time. People could hit that tire all day long with that sledgehammer, but at the end of the day, they just got a good workout in. They didn't have firewood to take and to heat their home.
That's right.
So I'm a big fan of being intentional. I won't say that I never use any equipment that we won't use, a skid steer or anything like that. But if you are using that, be intentional that, hey, I used a skid steer to move X amount or a certain percentage of this mulch pile. I need to go ahead and move some of it myself manually so that I get some exercise in, so that I don't have to go to the gym. So there's a balance there, but overall the goal should be to not look at it as I need to go to the gym to get fit, because so many people think that's the only way of getting their exercise, and that's not true. There's so many different ways, whether you're running, doing the physical activities on a homestead or whatever. The main thing is to be physically active, and we all need to be physically fit for the lifestyles that we live. And we're not designed to sit at a cubicle for hour upon hour each day. That's not what a creator had in mind when he was thinking about it. We got muscles that we need to be using. They need to be used on a regular basis, and pumping blood throughout our body. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, I watched one of your videos where you actually showed some of the stretches that you do before doing your chores to kind of warm your body up.
Yeah.
And that's something that I fail to do. I just want to get out there and just do it. And I'm getting exercise done, but then I could hurt myself. And so that was really good. And then you also showed, based on your ability, it kind of cracked me up, but it was really good though, how you showed like speed walking and running and jogging and sprinting. And I was like, that's really good based on your ability.
Yeah. And farmer's walk was another exercise we had at the gym. We do that all day long with carrying buckets of feed and water around. And if you want to make it even, take things to the next level and make it even more aggressive, is add some jogging in between your chores. See how fast you can do it, and add some push-ups and other things in there if you feel like you need it. But the gym, it works for some people, but it doesn't have to be for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned it's not only just the working out part, but it's the diet. It's the what you're eating, what you're putting into your body.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on going vegan or carnivore diet, which a lot of our friends and neighbors are looking into right now?
Diet is extremely important. With doing bodybuilding, I tell people there was no way that I could step on stage if the diet wasn't right. I could work out all day long. I could do crunches all day long. That doesn't mean I'm going to have a six-pack. It was a diet that got you the results you want, and that applies in other areas. Over the years, I've tried a lot of diets personally. My wife's tried diets personally. I've prescribed diets as a nutritional coach and personal trainer for years, various ones to different people. And a lot of the times with the vegan or a juice cleanse or a carnivore diet, a lot of those things can be very beneficial on a short-term basis. It can help you to cleanse. It can help you to drop some weight for a short period of time. But those aren't lifestyles. So with the diet, our overall diet, we need to think about what is one that we need to do on a life as a lifestyle? One that needs to be nutritionally dense. That's important. We can't just go from one extreme where we're lacking, like a vegan diet is lacking a lot of the nutrient dense food that we're to have. It's interesting that all these different foods, they come in so many different flavors and colors, and it's amazing that you can see that there's a design there, because if it was just to eat food for fuel, for survival, it didn't need to have all that. It didn't need to have all that. But we can enjoy life. We can enjoy the various foods that are out there in balance. For me, when I was seeing all the contradictory information out there, I looked to the Bible as the solid source of where is the foundation, the basis that I need to work from for building a good diet, lifestyle diet. And it includes a variety of foods that we can eat ongoing. And to supplement that, Dr. Jordan Rubin, he did an excellent book called The Maker's Diet, as well as Dr. Don Colbert, another good book, and based on similar principles. But people get off on various ditches and the extremes, and those are not lifestyle type diets to be on.
What are your thoughts on the Weston A. Price Foundation and their thoughts on the principles of health?
I really enjoy the Weston A. Price and a number of the principles that they put in place, and I really enjoy hearing about their story, how Dr. Weston would go and try to prove that there was a culture that was on a vegan diet, and then he couldn't find one. That's just pretty amazing. But also when you really break down, especially specifically the vegan diet, it's also a diet that wouldn't be sustainable for most people to be on, especially as you're into agriculture. You realize that all these different vegan foods weren't available for most people year round. And then you also think about the survival of what was needed from a nutritional standpoint, that those foods didn't provide you with that. That there were people that were out there, they did a lot of hunting, that were eating a lot of meat, those things that would have provided them with the sustenance that they would need for optimal survival and to live those physical lifestyles that they lived.
And with the vegan diet, you have to live at a certain latitude to be able to eat fruits and vegetables year round.
Yeah, that's true.
Like you can't live way north or way south and live like that. There's just no way.
That's a good point. Like, sorry, that's a good point. Like just thinking about the seasonality and how we should be eating what is accessible and fresh at that time for us where we're at. Yeah, it's not sustainable.
Yeah, I've seen the YouTube channel where one person's eating like all of this one day, every day. And it's like...
No, just for like breakfast.
Yeah, it was just like one meal.
This is what I eat for breakfast. And it was like 10 oranges and like...
Yeah.
Unless you live in Hawaii or somewhere tropical, like you don't even have that available.
Yeah.
How would we survive?
Yeah.
Right? And not everybody can live there.
And also with that in mind, I do feel like we're designed to be able to adapt for short periods of time on shorter varieties of food, just for survival purposes. We can go on with that. But overall, that the most important thing would be to have a lifestyle, a diet that is a balanced one and nutrient dense.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your life on YouTube for us to get a sneak peek into what you value. I know it's a very intimate place because that's something that we struggle with sometimes, like how much do we want to share? Mm-hmm. But you're just so open and loving about it and inspiring so many families, including ours, with the children and showing that what a wholesome family looks like, being partners in business and partners in life and being great parents or great examples for your children and being great stewards of the land too. So it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then having to hold the camera alongside you. So we thank you for that work.
Oh,
yeah.
We appreciate it.
And we can vouch too that what we see on video is the real deal. That's
We try to be.
Yeah.
That's our goal.
Yeah, there's so many times that we wanted to quit homesteading, wanted to quit YouTube, and then we hear people send us encouraging comments that, hey, I started a garden because of you, or I did this and this because of you. Thank you. You're like,
I ordered ducks because of you guys. Or chickens.
having a positive impact on people's lives. It's like, oh wow, I can't quit. Keep going.
Yeah, well, you are our friends and mentors in that aspect because as the cookbook came out and now us realizing that taking too much time off of work, I have that anxiety of, especially working in tech, how do I go back to, I can't take that much time off of work before my skills become obsolete. But at the same time, I'm now learning all of these things that I never actually had hands-on experience with. But yeah, your business mentorship for us has been really, we're really grateful for that too. And just learning the ins and outs of the business and the pros and cons and kind of the shortcuts of, hey, try this instead of that, or even the attachment to the camera, for example, so you can move faster on the farm. That's just a lot of the things that, as I've been thinking about going back, those messages are coming in and they send me pictures or their videos of them making pho with their family and how much their daughter and then their children and their son-in-law, like it's just bringing the whole family together, that I realize if I went back to work, I never got these messages before.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I do solve problems through selling software to some aspect, but not really impacting families and individuals and children's and generations. Not saying it's, making a huge difference in the world, but even just to one small family. And that's what I said when I wrote the book was just supposed to be for our family. But if there's one family out there that we can impact their lives and change their lives for the better, because that's potentially generations that we're affecting. So, but it is a tall order, and it is a lot of work compared to, like, on top of what we're already doing in our daily lives, just to keep things in balance, like you said.
Yeah. But that's empowering, though.
Yeah.
Would you say it's more empowering than the tech world?
Yeah, I think that's why I really struggle. I can't go back.
Yeah.
At this point where I'm at, I'm really trying to figure out what this new world looks like, and what my new world looks like. Now that it's, I'd worked remote before, but for software companies, and then now it's okay. Well, I'm consulting, so I'm still doing the work. I'm staying on top of technology and all of the marketing strategies in place, and still reaching out to people and giving them what they want, and seeing what that is that they want.
It's so interesting that technology has connected people around the world more than ever before now. But at the same time, we're more disconnected than ever before. And that how actually kind of going backwards to the basic things of life is what really connects us in the way that we should be connected, of growing food and physically connecting with one another. Just interesting to think about.
Absolutely. Mike and Lacie, it's just such an honor to host you here. Thank you again. And I know you both have so many followers and subscribers, but where can they find you?
You can find us primarily on the YouTube channel, The Fit Farmer, but we're both on Instagram. I'm on Instagram as The Fit Farmer, and she's on there as Yurt Mama as well.
Yurt.mama.
Yes.
And we're excited. We're going to be helping you with a website and launching. And on top of that, we are sharing our puppy with you guys.
We are, yes. Some future content on that. That's going to be awesome.
Yes. And also, the different times throughout the year, speak at various conferences coming up. I have Mountain Readiness Conference in Harmony, North Carolina, May 3rd through the 5th. There's also some others. God Goods Table event that'll be, I think that's August, we plan to be at. But also planning to launch a microgreens course as well. So look forward, and if anybody is interested in any of that information, they can also sign up for our email newsletter, and we can keep them up to date on those.
Well,
we're so excited.
Yeah.
Thank you so much again, Mike and Lacie.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for listening. If please like and subscribe to our podcast and our YouTube as well. And please feel free to share it out with your friends and family. And if you feel inspired to get out there and buy land, reach out to me at homesteadingrealtor.com. And if you need some financing for that, look up freedomfundings.com and reach out to Sophie. We'd be honored to help you. Thank you so much. And until then, stay healthy.